Welcome to Improve Your English Writing video number 31. This is part 3 in my discussion about the comma. And in this video I'm going to discuss an introductory phrase or clause before a second independent clause, which is rule number 10. And then rule number 11, contrasting phrases. If you'd like to get notifications for this series, please click subscribe. If you like the video or think others will find it useful, please hit like. Check out links to videos and books in the description, like a link to the companion volume. So let's get on with rule number 10. And rule number 10 says, when an introductory phrase or clause precedes the second independent clause in a compound sentence, use a comma before the coordinating conjunction and a comma after the introductory phrase or clause. Omit the comma after a one-word conjunctive adverb. So let's get into an example, and we can go through it and reread the rule again for clarification. So here it is. So if we have the sentence, we can meet Wednesday, or if you prefer, we can meet Thursday morning. Here we have an introductory, highlighted in blue, introductory phrase or clause, highlighted blue, before the second independent clause in a compound sentence. So if you took out this phrase right here and this comma, you would actually have a compound sentence. So when you put an introductory phrase before this, before the second independent clause, use a comma before the conjunction, the coordinating conjunction, a comma after the phrase. The reason for this rule is that if you didn't have this rule, you would actually need to put a comma after the coordinating conjunction, but that's just too many commas. So this rule is really telling you when you have this situation, because usually by the other rules you put a comma here, you can just omit this comma. That's what this rule is really saying, that it's worded this way. So another example. So if you took out, once again, if you took out this blue phrase and this comma, you would have a compound sentence. You know, I'm just going to read it like that way. Jim spilled coffee on his shirt and he excused himself. That's a compound sentence. Now we stick in this introductory phrase, realizing the boss noticed, before the second independent clause. What we do is we put a comma before the coordinating conjunction, just like we'd normally do, and then we put a comma after the introductory phrase or clause, in this case the phrase. Another example, once again, I'm not going to go through it all, but basically you have this independent clause, coordinating conjunction, introductory phrase, and another independent clause. So once again, you put the comma before the coordinating conjunction and after the phrase. Management promoted Tiffany last week, and to tell you the truth, everyone was relieved it was not Jacob. I think my last example just contains a one word. Remember, the exception is omit the comma after one word conjunctive adverb. So here's that examples. Because if you take out this, unfortunately, once again, you'd still have a compound sentence. I arrived late to work and everyone noticed. If you take out this conjunctive adverb, you just have a compound sentence. But here, you're sticking in a one-word conjunctive adverb. In this case, you don't need to put the comma after the one-word conjunctive adverb. So you'd read, I arrived late to work, and unfortunately, everyone notices. How you would punctuate this. So that's it, I believe. Is that it for Rule 10? No, that's right. I forgot this portion. Sorry. Now, coming back to this is we have this, these examples. And then I'm going to discuss this comma right before the coordinating conjunction. So now I continue and say, well, you use the comma before the coordinating conjunction in most cases. But per rule number 20, which we'll get to in video number 35, you use a semicolon after the coordinating, or before the coordinating conjunction. This should read before the coordinating conjunction when a misreading is likely. This typically occurs when, remember, we're dealing with a compound sentence, right? So this occurs when both independent clauses contain at least one internal comma, or the introductory phrase or the independent clause contain multiple commas. So effectively, what's happening is you get a comma in both independent clauses, or you're getting multiple comments, in either independent clause or their introductory element. So some examples. Oh, that's right. And then this comment. And this goes along with my rule of thumb I introduced in video number 8 that says three's a crowd, which basically says when you have three commas are generally too many. It's not always true, but basically 3 commas in a sentence, not related to like series, like items in a series, but when you're separating parts of sentences, like independent clauses and and these phrases and clauses that once you hit 3, you've hit too many, and you need to use another punctuation mark for clarity. So going back to this, usually use a comma, but you can use a semicolon before the coordinating conjunction when you basically are getting too many commas. And here's an example when you would use the semicolon. The office supply shipment lacked ordered items. So here you have an independent clause. And when I called customer service to send the pens, binders, and paper clips, they had no record of the order. So what happened is that if you go back to the original rule, we'd actually stick a comma here. But what happens is that this second independent clause we already have 3 commas. So if you stuck a comma here, you could be confused on what's happening in the sentence. Is it separating these series of items, or am I separating the 2 clauses? So for clarity, to separate the two independent clauses, you'd use a semicolon. So this doesn't happen very often. And that's why I say in most cases you're going to use a comma, but there is an exception. When you start getting too many commas, you will use the semicolon to separate the independent clauses. So let's move on to Rule 11. Rule 11 says use a comma at the end of a sentence or commas mid-sentence to separate a contrasting phrase. So a contrasting phrase usually begins with the words but, even though, never, not, rather than, or and though. And then one of the exceptions is the comma may be omitted if the contrasting phrase, which is usually a but phrase, does not interrupt the flow of the sentence. So let's look at some examples to clarify this rule. So basically, if you have a contrasting phrase, you're just separating it with a comma. You see, plead for mercy, comma, not justice. This not justice is a contrasting phrase. One of the things we use to help identify it is that we can look at these contrasting phrases begin with these words. So plead for mercy, comma, not justice. Staff meetings occur on Mondays. Whoops, this should be just occur, not occurs. Staff meeting. Wow. Oh, the staff meeting. No, it is correct. Wow, apparently I can't read English. The staff meeting occurs on Mondays, never Tuesdays. This is a contrasting phrase, therefore we separate it with a comma. And here, the last one, we have an example of when we may omit it. Diana's vacation was short but enjoyable. So since this but phrase does not interrupt the flow of the sentence, we just omit the comma. It may be omitted. You can actually put the comma here if you want to. So you may omit the comma. It'd also be correct if you put the comma here. So that's it for this video. If you'd like to get notifications for the series, please click subscribe. If you like the video, please hit like, and check out links to books and videos in the description. Thank you.